Well, my name's Rich Greene, and I'm the co-chair of the Citizens for a Safer Shelby Committee, which was formed to help the levy for the police and courthouse pass. And when I was asked to serve on the committee, I wanted to hear about what the levy was going to entail, because I know there had been two previous efforts and they were not successful, and I just wanted to see what this one involved and how it differed from the previous ones. And of course, the levy is a 0.3% increase in the city income tax for 25 years, and it will only be applied to earned income, so no retirement income will be involved. And it will be for 25 years, and it will be raising approximately $8 million so that we can build a new police and court building. When I heard what the details were regarding the levy, I felt very good about it. I thought it was a better levy request than the previous efforts were. I think they've pared down the project to the point where the citizens can be comfortable that it will have the bare minimum requirements of the state for a police department and a courthouse. There'll be no frills, no excesses in the building, and so I was more than comfortable signing on as co-chair for the committee. And once the committee started to meet, one of the first things we decided to do was to hold a meeting out at the police department, where it's temporarily located on Wareham Road, and also at the courthouse, where it's located out in the industrial park, because several of us at either location, and if we were going to talk to the citizens about it, we needed to be familiar with it. And I guess the first thing that got my attention was I just assumed that the police department occupied the entire building they're in out on Wareham Road, and we got out here, and much to my surprise, and I suspect would be to the surprise of many citizens, they're only using about a third of the building, because the building owner has found it necessary to utilize at least 2/3 of the building, and they happened to be using it when we were out here that night. They were driving tow motors around, moving inventory around, because it really is a warehouse, and the police department is temporarily occupying it. And it besides the fact that there's a limited space, and it's really not the type of building that should have been built for a police department. In my opinion, there's several security issues that seem very obvious. There just really isn't the security that I would have expected there to be in a building that is housing a police department. And so that's one of the reasons that it became quickly apparent to me that the building just wasn't adequate for the purposes that we were trying to use it as a police department. And much the same holds true for the courthouse. It's currently located out in the industrial park, and it was obvious also that it really just doesn't have the facilities that are needed to run a good municipal court. And there's several security issues out there, in my opinion, and actually John Medley, who's also on the committee as a co-chair, he was involved in the construction of the building, and so he's very familiar with what it was intended to be, and he can probably expand on that.
I'm John Medley. I've grown up going to school, raised a family, and worked in Shelby. And when I was asked to be a member of this committee, especially with Rich as a co-chair, I was delighted to be able to give something back to the town, something I feel is desperately needed. And as Rich said, my company built the building out on Industrial Parkway. It was built as an engineering and surveying building, and the court is presently being held in our old drafting room. So we didn't think ahead of time that this was going to be a court, and it needed an entrance and an exit. It's just a very nice building, and it makes somebody a very good office building, but definitely not a courthouse.
My name is Steve Schagg, and I serve as the chairman of the Buildings and Grounds Commission, and also I'm privileged to serve on the City Council. I was going to go back a little bit to the beginning of our site selection process. We began our first meeting on April the 10th, 2008, organizational meeting. We actually hit the ground running, and John Medley is one of the 7 community-minded men that served on that commission. And we began to sort through possible sites. The backdrop to all of our site selection process was the fact that we wanted something, of course, that would certainly provide for the safety and welfare of the citizens of Shelby, Also, we're looking for a site that would be suitable for construction of state-of-the-art facilities. Looking for something that would merit the approval of City Council, that it was a well-studied process, and we made those recommendations. On April the 23rd of 2010, the Buildings and Ground Commission was called together again, and we were delighted to find out that through a series of events that had recently transpired, that we were once again going to look at the Miami System site. This had been a site we had looked at before, but for a number of reasons had been eliminated. We were informed of the details of the property and the cost, and it was the wholehearted vote from the commission to recommend to City Council that we do purchase those 10 parcels. The matter went before City Council, and City Council then unanimously approved the purchase of the properties along Tucker and Mack and High School Avenue. I believe, and I think John would agree with me here, that there's been a real feeling of satisfaction among all those who have worked very hard, long and hard, on this site selection process, that we were able to come back to the Miami System site. Pleased that we're finding a site that has a downtown proximity. And at the very beginning of our process, we were looking for that. But now we're able to come back to a downtown site in the largest sense of the word. It's a site also that is being purchased with insurance monies, and so that will be extracted, of course, from the whole building process and all the costs involved there. So I just think that everyone involved with this, from the city officials on down to the Buildings and Grounds Commission, that we are very, very pleased and satisfied with the site of the old Miami Systems.
To build on something Steve just mentioned about the site location, there was a common thread running through a lot of the comments we were hearing after the last election. And the comments were, we would prefer to have a downtown site. And with this site becoming available, in all the sites we looked at on the Building and Grounds Commission, it is the closest site to downtown that is outside the flood zone. So we think we've met that criteria, and I think it'll be good for the city and good for the police and court.
This is not an issue that will go away. The police department moved out here following the flood in August of 2007, and it was always intended to be a temporary location, and the same with the courthouse moving out to the industrial park. And here we are 3.5 years later, still housing both those entities in the temporary location, and they just don't fit the needs of the courthouse nor the police department. And so this is something that we're going to have to address, and this I think most people after they see the facts would come to the conclusion that it's better to address it now rather than kick it down the street for another year or 2 or 3 years, because the situation isn't going to get any better for the police department and the courthouse, and it's just going to get probably more and more difficult for them to operate.
It's worth mentioning, too, with the flood event, that our safety forces were out and did an excellent job. I mean, this just seemed like they were everywhere. And then they have to come back to this after a long, hard day like that, no showers, just come back to a warehouse after a citywide flood. So I think that just kind of underscores the need in this area for the police to have a facility to come back to after such events.